Hey, dear ones. We are now to part 3 of a 4-part series where I'm sharing inspirational stories. The inspiration behind this series is that tomorrow's my birthday, and I'm really looking at ways to just pour into myself this year. And when I thought about what I wanted to record for the next batch of podcasts due, I thought it would really be fun to share inspirational stories. So in today's episode, I reveal the 3rd inspirational story of our series, which has its origins in Malaga, Spain. I'll end on an invitation that will have you identifying all the unconventional ways that you may have received healing over the years. Hint, that's what this story is about, without even realizing it. So please stay with me until the end. Hello there. We're creating a global community of soul-guided leaders, coaches, healers, and entrepreneurs called the Soul Guide Circle. In the Soul Guide Circle, we're inviting in our spiritual gifts to get our clients even more results and transformations so you can create massive referral buzz. Find a link to join our closed Facebook group at AllisonScammell.com or in the show notes. Today, we're talking about my dog, Astrid. Now look, I get it. Everybody loves to talk about their own kids and talk about their own dogs and say how our kids and our dogs are more special than yours and anyone else's. Today's story is going to be different because I'm here to say that my dog Astrid is more special than all the other dogs. No, I'm just kidding. But I kind of am not just kidding because there is kind of a flavor of that. So before you roll your eyes and say, yeah, Allison, I hear you. I have a special dog too. I want to say, I know that you have a special dog or pet or animal or thing in your life too. But this is more a story about this special animal that is really inspirational. So please stay with me. So I have a dog named Astrid, and she's a Spanish Greyhound. For those of you catching this on YouTube, I'm actually wearing my Greyhound t-shirt. I'm showing it on the camera right now. Greyhounds are such beautiful animals. I'm a big Greyhound fan. Here's a few things about Greyhounds you may not have already known. 1, they are one of, and many believe to be, the most abused dog breed in the world. Many places racing Greyhounds is illegal, but many places it is not. And if you ever hear dog racers say they use humane practices of their dogs, please question that because it's often not true. Spain has a special way that they race Greyhounds, and it's not on a track. It's through a field, and it's called coursing. And it's actually much, much more dangerous. The Spanish Greyhound racers have lobbied the government so that Greyhounds, Spanish Greyhounds called galgos, are considered property. They are the same as a pair of shoes. So you can treat them legally any which way you could legally treat a pair of shoes. So the dogs have very, very little to basically no rights. The practice in Spain is to overbreed the dogs on purpose because finding the winning race dog is like finding a diamond in the rough, so they say. So they overbreed on purpose, and then they use really, really horrible, awful techniques to determine quickly which dogs will indeed hunt. You know that expression, that dog will hunt? Which dogs will indeed be the ones that they will keep to train to race through these fields. I'm not going to go into it because this is an inspirational story, but just trust me when I say the tactics they use to cull, if you will, the dogs to find out which ones will be the winners and which ones won't is very abusive and horrible. And I'm using the word cull because the dogs that don't get picked, which is an overwhelming majority of them, because remember, they've been overbred, so they've got lots of dogs. They only pick a few to actually race. And those that aren't chosen, at very, very best, just get released into the wilderness. So they get abandoned, but sometimes what happens to these dogs who don't get chosen is much, much worse than that. If you want to learn more about it, all you have to do is Google Spanish Greyhound, and most of the links that will pop up are actually about the abuse of greyhounds, especially Spanish Greyhounds. Some of the videos and stories are really, really hard to watch and read, but I'm sharing this because I do want to bring awareness to the fact that this practice is going on. And if we don't talk about it, people won't know about it. So I will say Astrid was your stereotypical pandemic dog. So it was the middle of the pandemic when we were longing for human-to-human contact, and we thought, okay, we're quarantined inside of our house. We've been talking about getting a dog. At that time, our daughter Freya was 4. Both of my husband and I grew up with dogs. I grew up on a farm. We always had a dog. My husband Pete grew up in a real dog family. So they always had 2 to even 3 dogs. And so dogs were a huge part of his childhood and mine too. And we really wanted Freya to have that experience. And neither Pete nor I had a dog as an adult up until now because we traveled all the time. But we thought, okay, here we are settled in the Netherlands. It's a pandemic. Let's get a dog. So once we got into the yes energy about getting a dog, it all got very synchronistic. And my husband's first wife's aunt, who we're very close to her and her family, she owns one of the most reputable Spanish Greyhound dog rescue shelters in Spain, in Malaga. And so we contacted her and said, hey, do you have a Greyhound for us? I didn't know anything about Greyhounds. I didn't know anything about rescue dogs. And rescue dogs who have been abused are a special, they just require special considerations. They need special care, which I'm going to be talking about in just a sec. And at the time, Freya was 4 years old. So that was also a consideration. What we really needed was like a dog that was really good with kids. But with these rescue dogs, you weren't always exactly sure what you were going to get. But we knew this woman, her name is Vera, the head of this rescue shelter, which I'm going to talk about more in just a sec. And we knew that she would give us, I just knew intuitively that she was going to give us a special dog. So we agreed. We were going to get Astrid. At the time, she was 18 months old. Astrid, in a couple weeks, is going to turn 6. Aw. So this was 4.5 years ago. And so because it was a pandemic, they ended up driving a bunch of dogs up from Spain to the Netherlands, where a group of people were adopting these dogs. And because it was the pandemic, usually there's a big party and there's a big handover process. But because of the pandemic, we literally had to drive our car up, pick the dog up, and drive away. And my husband and I, we're not we both grew up with dogs, but our parents took care of the dogs. We just really felt like we had no idea what we were doing. So we get this dog. And she was really scared. We were trying to get her to jump up into the back of our SUV, and she was too scared too. So what we had her do instead is we picked her up and we put her in the back seat with me. And she sat down next to me. And she just sort of cuddled up to me on the drive home. And I knew from that moment, I'm like, oh, she's cuddling with me. For those of you who know the breed, the Greyhound, they're not the cuddliest breed in the world. They're quite an aloof breed, actually. But she really was. It was kind of a rare moment, which I realize now, that Astrid was cuddling with me. I think she was really happy she had found her home. So we get her home, and I remember the first nights were a little like, wow, what are we going to do with this dog? She had never lived inside. We had to house train her, so that was like the next thing. And then the next thing after that came right away, was Freya. Freya was a little bit or a lot of bit jealous at all the attention that Pete and I were giving to Astrid, our new dog, dog training, helping her to get acclimatized. It was we got her in March, and it was an unusually cold March in the Netherlands. And this poor dog who had just come from like super warm, beautiful weather was freezing. Greyhounds don't have much of a coat, so she had no fur. So we were just trying to do everything to make this dog feel comfortable. But Freya was not having it. So she would tug on the dog's ears. She would tug on his tail. She would just give Astrid unwanted attention. And here's the thing about Astrid. She will let you know when she doesn't want it. She is the best communicator I've ever known. If she likes it, she'll tell you. If she doesn't like it, you'll know. And she tells you with a growl. The girl likes to growl. So when we first got her and Freya was messing with her, she would growl. And because we didn't know this dog and we didn't know what she was capable of doing, we didn't know if Astrid was going to bite Freya's face off. So we had to monitor the dog and the 4-year-old at all times. Now you might think, oh, well, there's 2 parents. That shouldn't be that hard. Let me tell you, it was hard. If I had to go to the bathroom, I had to call Pete and say, Pete, come here. Be on dog and child watch while I go to the bathroom. We literally had to monitor them at all times. And when Freya wouldn't listen to us, we'd be like, Freya, don't pester the dog, but she'd do it anyway. And I wasn't sure how the dog was going to react. I would get very nervous and very scared that the dog would bite her or do something terrible. And it got to the point where Pete and I were just emotionally fried. We were so exhausted from monitoring this dog and this essentially a little older than a toddler and trying to keep them away from each other and trying to make sure that Astrid didn't do something. We literally got to the point of being emotionally fried. And that's when Pete said to me, I don't know if this is going to work out. We might have to send Astrid back. But at that point, I was already too attached to her. And I just thought, I cannot send this dog back. I love her too much. So we just didn't know what to do. Around this time also, we realized we had to get her a proper dog jacket because she was just freezing all the time, the poor thing. So I ordered her this super cute plaid, soft, warm Greyhound jacket that just gently went right over the top of the dog, and then you fastened it underneath the belly with just a Velcro. Very easy. So we get the dog jacket, we put her on her. She loves it. It's warm, it's soft, it's cozy. We go outside, we have a beautiful walk. She's so happy. And then, this was the nighttime walk. It was like 10:30 at night. It was like we were still sort of potty training her, so we were going out a lot. We get back in. She's all happy. She's all loving her new jacket. She looks so cute. And then I go to take the jacket off. And I unvelcro the belt. And it makes that Velcro sound. And I really do not have the words to describe what happens next. This dog let out a howl, an absolute howl. that was so long and there was just so much agony and pain in this howl. I have never heard a living being make such a noise that was infused with so much agony. And I didn't even touch her. It was literally the sound had triggered a memory that set her into a place of pain I have literally never experienced. And I have been a trauma coach. I mean, I have coached people through very traumatic times in their lives, and I, with my experience, have never experienced anything like this. So we quickly got the coat off of her as fast as we could. She went to the corner of the room and stood there shaking, just shaking. And she was in the living room. So Pete and I went to the couch. We gave her distance. And we just sat there. We just sat there in silence as she stood there and shook. She was on the other side of the kitchen table, so I think she felt kind of safe. Because at that point in time, she hadn't developed full trust with Pete or I. And I had the intuition that we need to just sit there in silence. So we didn't turn the TV on. We didn't really talk. We were both in shock. To this day, I don't know what the neighbors would have thought because it was the loudest thing I've ever heard. So they definitely would have heard it. And we just sat there for I don't know how long. A period of time passed. And then little by little, she started walking towards us. And little by little, she sat down a couple feet from us. And we still didn't touch her. We just sat there. And I could see, as she was standing there shaking, I could see the trauma being released from her little body. Because remember, animals store trauma just the way humans do. And we have to experience that trauma that's trapped inside of us in order to release it. And that's exactly what she was doing. But it was a release like nothing I've ever seen or been witness to. And then the physical shaking was also the trauma leaving her body. So finally, she got into her dog bed, she got curled up, and she fell asleep. Pete and I went to bed. And as we pillow talked that night, Pete said to me, "This dog clearly has trauma. This dog clearly has triggers that we don't know about, and we don't know anything could trigger her. I mean, the sound of that Velcro probably reminded her of a shock collar from when she was being trained by these Greyhound, air quotes, farmers. They're called farmers in Spain. And when she was being trained to see whether or not she could be a winning race dog, which she failed the test, and which is how we got her, you know, they used shock collars. They used all sorts of really nasty methods. So that sound triggered some memory in her of some awful experience. She also has some really bad scars on her body. So we don't know what happened. It's hard for me to imagine anyone being cruel. Because again, if you know greyhounds, you know how incredibly sensitive they are. They're known to be one of the most sensitive breeds. If I say to Astrid, like, "Astrid," if I say that to her, she just cowers of, she has such a strong reaction to any sort of raise of the voice. You have to be so gentle with these creatures. They're actually not so little. But these creatures are so sensitive. I can't imagine being cruel to any animal and then take a hyperly sensitive animal and beating it. I don't really have the words for that. I'm lost in my comprehension of how somebody could do that. I mean, okay, yeah, I do understand how it happens. And, people who do that, people who abuse, have a lot of wounds inside of them, lots of wounds inside. And so being the abuser is the manifestation of trapped trauma inside the body. So there is a piece of me with empathy. But right now I'm thinking about Astrid, and so I'm very protective of her. And I'm very protective of all greyhounds and basically all animals who are suffering and all people who are suffering. So getting back to the pillow talk with Pete, he said to me, we don't know what our triggers are. We're not equipped for this. We have Freya, who's pulling her tail, pulling her ears, acting like a bully to the dog because she's jealous. I think we have to give the dog back. And again, my heart just sank, and I was just like, I don't know if I can, but I knew, a piece of me knew that Pete was right. Like, maybe we just need to find her a different home. We're not the right family. So the very next morning, I wake up, I go down to greet Astrid, and I just felt it with every cell of my body that when she greeted me, she was a different dog. She was nuzzling me, cuddling me. I just knew that something had healed in her, and all of a sudden, she trusted me. She developed trust in me. And from that moment on until today, she has been an entirely different dog. She has been a dog you would never know she was a rescue. She shows no signs of abuse now. She trusts Pete and I completely. We're still working on her and Freya and their relationship. That's a work in progress. But when it comes to Pete and me, there's absolute unwavering trust. I feel so deeply that Astrid came to us for a divine reason, and we healed each other. During those weeks where I was just on emotional edge, I was releasing all sorts of pent-up trauma about something will happen to my daughter. I was healing past lifetime stuff, ancestral stuff. When I was on emotional edge, I was actually also releasing a lot of blocks and trauma blocks. And then when she had the night of the great howl, she released an absolutely massive trauma block. And it was miraculous to me that after that night, how it was like a flip of a switch. And all of a sudden, she was this healthy, happy, well-adjusted dog with complete trust. And it made me realize, how we all come together for a reason, how we all help each other heal. When I was thinking about getting a dog, I never dreamed I would be getting a dog that would help me heal past lifetime wounds, and I would do the same. And now I have this extraordinary creature. Astrid is just an absolutely extraordinary dog with so high consciousness. I speak to Astrid's higher self all the time. She is truly a human just wearing a dog suit. The consciousness behind her eyes will absolutely just blow you away. I mean, I hear it from people all the time. She's so smart. She's just extraordinary. I struggle with the fact that I know that dogs don't live so long. And so sometimes I get overwhelmed by, what will happen when Astrid is no longer with us. But I try to do the pre-grieving. I try not to stuff it down. And I try instead to do the pre-grieving, so I'll be ready for when that day comes, which I'm manifesting is not for a very, very, very long time. But such a source of joy for me. And my times with Astrid, walking on the beach, watching her sprint, she really is an endless source of joy. My invitation for you this week is to reflect back on your own experiences of when you might have been healed from a person or an animal or a situation that you just didn't expect. Maybe there's a little bit of healing that's left to be done, but see if you can recognize that unconventional healing for what it is, as the gift it is, and Send a little gratitude for that unconventional healing that it was able to occur. And in this moment, I'm sending gratitude to Astrid, to this Greyhound rescue shelter. And to be honest, I'm sending gratitude to the Greyhound farmer who bred Astrid. Although I do want overbreeding to stop, certainly, I can send a little gratitude for the people who created the circumstances so that Astrid was born. But certainly I want to work to stop this overbreeding and to make sure that all greyhounds of all the different various breeds of greyhounds just have a happy, loving home to live in and a happy, loving life to experience. So on that note, I am going to leave a link in the show notes to the rescue shelter that saved Astrid's life and then connected Astrid to us to take Astrid from a truly traumatic experience to a home of unconditional love. And the rescue shelter that made that possible is called Galgos y Familia, and they're based in Malaga, Spain. And if you would like to give them a donation, that would mean so much to me. This is part of my birthday episode package, so you can consider this yet another birthday gift for me and just a wonderful thing to do for the Astrids of the world. And we're going to leave a link in the show notes for you to leave a donation if you feel so called. And I would be so, so grateful if you did. All right, that's a wrap for this week. And as always, I'll be back in your earbuds next week for our fourth and final episode of this 4-part series where I am sharing inspirational stories. And as always, until next time, may your soul guide the way.